Rolling on February 6th, 2018, where we're about to hear a speech from, I don't know how to say your name. Zoe Wong, right? Zoe Wong, who's going to talk about President Trump's visit to China. And she's standing in the power stance, you'll notice. Her feet are wider than her shoulders. She's looking around the room, communicating respect non-verbally. She says to herself silently, and really means it, I respect my audience. I'm not going to talk down to them, but to them, heart to heart. She's finding friendly eyes near the front and center. Say your name, feel the love, start your speech.
Hi everyone, my name is Zoe.
Hi Zoe.
Class, Professor Miller. On November 8th, 2017, I was on a video chat with my mom when my grandma suddenly popped out of nowhere and hijacked our conversation. She said to me hysterically, I think Grandpa Trump is a great guy. Imagine how shocked I was upon hearing this. Well, not just because my grandma is, complimenting on some other guy behind my grandpa's back, but because this guy happens to be the President of the United States, who is probably not that great of a guy to the view of many of my friends here in Cali. Later on, I discovered that this is not just a hysteria of my grandma, but a widely held impression of Trump after his visit in China in 2017. This phenomena provides essential implications for the question that I like to talk about today, which is, what did Trump's visit to China actually achieve? I will give you three answers in the aspect of, first, diplomacy, second, economy, and third, military. The first accomplishment of Trump is that he won large popularity among the Chinese public, which is a huge improvement of the diplomatic improvement of the Sino-American relation. Because according to the New Yorker, ever since Nixon's ice-breaking visit to China in the 1976, U.S. presidents have been prone to making unwelcome gestures, such as they're prone to raising China's plight of dissidents. But President Trump, however, he seems to be delivering a message that the two nations are in fact in harmony. According to the New York Times, Trump's granddaughter has made a video of singing a traditional Chinese song to the Chinese audience, which has caused which is welcomed by the Chinese, as they think that the Chinese culture is going to the world stage. And secondly, again, according to the New Yorker, the Trump has been referred to as Grandpa Trump, and someone who's described as goofy and cute, according to some state-run television in China. This unconventional title, Grandpa Trump, it's very unusual to refer to a foreign leader, has an implication of a forbearing sense of affection. Okay, so the second accomplishment is more practical and less sentimental than this one, which is, in the economic aspect, Trump has made a series of successful deals with China, as well as an effort to make more liberal trade agreements. According to the Fox business, accompanied by chiefs of some of the most influential American companies, such as Goldman Sachs and Boeing, Trump has made a deal of more than $200 billion with China. For example, Boeing announced that it has made a deal of selling 300 planes to China during Trump's visit. And also, on the other hand, according to the New York Times, China has agreed that it will open more service sectors, such as banking, to greater foreign investments. At last, let's talk about military. Trump has been pressuring Xi during his visit to take tougher measures toward North Korea in terms of national as well as global security. According to the Washington Post, Trump has asked Xi to cut off the oil export from China to North Korea, as well as send back home workers from North Korea in China. So this has apparently caused the pressure on President Xi, who will take measure against the North Korean nuclear crisis. So in summary, I will give you three aspects: diplomacy, economy, and military. From the three aspects, Trump did a pretty good job in making improvements. So there should be no doubt at this point in this room that Trump has made significant achievements during his visit in China. So as the Chinese saying goes, harmony is the basis for all prosperity. Trump has assumed an image that suits perfectly well this traditional Chinese ideology, which soothes and approaches Chinese people like my grandma. So in this way, he manages to make successful cooperation and negotiation in a country that's far away. Thank you.
Thank you. The time
4:56.
4:56. Thank you very much. Could you get back in the center of the room? Yeah, our room. Can I see how she looks? Okay, you're going here. Okay, hi.
Hi everyone, my name's Erica.
Hi, Erica. Roll out, Erica. You're ways away.
It was a great speech. I really liked the flow of the speech. It was really nice. I liked the beginning, the little joke you had, made it personal. But overall, a really good speech. It's kind of hard to talk about diplomacy, especially with another country. So I think you did a fairly well job of that.
Okay. Improvement?
Improvement, yes.
Name?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Arun, everyone.
Hi, Arun.
I would say one improvement, more so on the substance of what you said. The Chinese proverb felt very forced at the end, like incredibly forced. And you said the words like harmony. I forget what the exact words were, but if you just said those words in your following preceding two sentences, then you could have tied it back to the proverb. You didn't even mention the words harmony, and I forget the other key word, prosperity, in relation to Trump. You didn't even mention those. So if you just tied it back, it could have been very, very powerful. Because you did it, it was very forced.
Thank you.
3 minutes.
3 minutes I have?
Yeah, go.
Zoe, a couple of things I want to start on the positive always. I think this was delivered as a very loyal Chinese subject would deliver it and would find no fault with what President Trump did during his visit. Now, surely when you were researching, you saw there was a little criticism out there for not raising certain aspects of, human rights and other little prickly things that human rights activists and other people wanted raised, but didn't get raised, right? So, but this is not new. When President Richard Nixon, opened China, he overlooked a lot of the more excessive totalitarian practices of China in order to get, détente and a working relationship with the Chinese. And the Chinese loved him for that, for not. And even after Tiananmen Square, Nixon visited China and didn't raise it. Whereas, President George Bush was worried about it. So that's my one sort of concern, that you could have taken a little slightly sharper edge to this. Let me talk about some of your technical stuff that you did. You got right to your thesis. You skipped your significant statement, and that's to sell it to the group.
1 minute.
Do not skip your significant statement. Also, I would like to see, Zoe, you had it in your text to, after you give your presentation, I always have this, I feel this way because, And I wasn't getting a lot of feeling to get that emotional connection that I'm looking for on your 3 points. The third criticism I have, and it's too late for Zoe, but not for the rest of you, she cited New York Times, Washington Post, but no date. So as far as we know, they were 20 years old. I know they're here in the footnotes, but no one can read that, right, Zoe? So I've asked you to orally say the dates and to do it that way. And just to wrap it up and to end on a positive note, you really focused on Trump as the goofy grandpa, and you really like that and think that's a positive thing for things to come. So you had a pretty nice tie back, and you did follow the Chicago style of footnoting and works cited. But just a little bit more analysis. You don't always have to take the party line here in America. No one's going to, come and get you if you say, gee, maybe a few little things could have been raised. But overall, nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Zoe.
People still giving their first speech. Somebody go up, please.
Yeah, somebody go up.
Good.
Just give me a second.
Yeah, it's real good, yeah. Not too close.
Cool.
Boom it out, sir.
Hi class, my name is Zihad.
Hi, Zihad.
According to the New York Times on November 4, 2008, Barack Obama was elected. He represented this new hope for America in that he would be instilling a new democracy that would usher in, as we know, the next 8 years. So the question I'm here to answer today is, what does 2018 have in store for French leader Emmanuel Macron? And I'm here to tell you that even though he'll have some ups and downs, overall he's going to have a successful year, similar to how his idol, President Barack Obama, did as well. Now, the 3 reasons I believe this is going to happen is because first, his proposed migration laws. Second, his plans to destroy fake news. And finally, he actually has the potential to stop Brexit and reunite the EU. And this is extremely important and significant because what he does will usher in a new era in France, which leads into what he can do for Europe, and eventually will have some tie back to the United States as well. So the first reason I believe that he will have a successful 2018 is because of his proposed migration laws. On January 16, 2018, he said that he will be allowing refugees to enter France because he feels that France was a reason that the refugee crisis started in the first place. I feel this way because he's gone on record and said that France is a country of immigrants, and if we keep the immigrants out, what does that say about France as a whole? Not only that, he sees that if he does try to keep people out, it's not really going to keep people out, but force refugees to try and get in through harsher means, and it would put those refugees into harm instead of just allowing them in, because they're going to find a way in anyway, as he believes. But ultimately, this is very significant considering, according to NPR on January 12, 2018, currently there are 65 million people displaced in the world. Now, it doesn't feel like a lot just saying that in general because we don't experience much displacement here. But just imagine, California has 40 million people. Just imagine that none of us had a home to go to. That's what these people are experiencing, and French leader wants to oppose this and find a way to combat this. The second reason I believe he will have a successful 2018 is because of his plans to combat fake news. Now, according to Politico on January 7, 2018, he feels that fake news is detrimental to liberal democracies, which is what he's trying to instill in France. Not only that, he has experience with fake news because during his own campaign, fake news was rampant and almost caused him to not win the election. Now, we see this as problematic for 2 reasons. First of all, it's detrimental to the liberal democracy he's trying to usher into France and go in a different route from his French predecessor. And because his French predecessor had similar problems to President Trump right now, in that the media played a huge role in what he was trying to do, it stopped a lot of policy actions from taking place. And the third reason I believe that Emmanuel Macron will have a successful 2018 is because he has the potential to stop Brexit. According to The Guardian, on December 30th, 2017, he feels that he wants to unify the planet. President Trump's slogan is "Make America Great Again." Leader Macron went with the saying "Make the planet great again," and he specifically cited Britain in doing so, and that he wants to return Britain to the EU. He believes this way because he feels neither party benefits from Britain leaving. The EU is going to suffer because they lost a country, and Britain's not going to see any great returns initially as well. So with the idea of reuniting the planet, it has that potential to extend both to the United States and other countries, ensuring that the European Union is a united front, not this destroyed entity because they're starting to lose people and other countries are starting to threaten them as well. In summary, I've given you 3 reasons why. First, being that he has new migration laws that are going to combat the refugee crisis. The second reason being his plans to combat fake news and showing that he doesn't want this to destroy the liberal democracy. And finally, he has the potential to stop Brexit as well, which has that benefit of reuniting the European Union and extending to the United States as well. In conclusion, there should be no doubt in this room that President Macron is going to have a successful 2018 because of the reasons I gave you previously. So when looking back to President Obama, the man he detailed his campaign behind, it's very evident to see, similar to how President Obama had his ups and downs, but ultimately his first year was a success, Macron will see the same.
Thank you. What did you like, Zoe?
First of all, I wished I could do the same, that you cited orally the dates very specifically. And second, I like your body gestures. They're like not too much, very simplistic, but gives people like a solid impression. So that's what I think.
Yeah. One thing, Zoe, you reminded me of, that I wanted to say to you is, you noticed you walked a little further than you did. And I'd like to see you take a few steps to the right, 5 steps back to the left, and then come back to center. So in your practice walking fully that way. Improvement.
Hi, I'm Cheyenne.
Hi, Cheyenne.
I think for your significant statement, more specifics on how like something going on in Europe would affect the United States, because I just didn't have that impact of like why I should care.
Okay, that's fair. I liked your presentation. It was very smooth, very fluent. I like your gestures. Let's start with the first criticism we heard over here of your significant statement. Yes, it didn't really relate to us, and she's very perceptive in noticing that all you said was you're going to carve a new path for France. Like I care. Right? You didn't cause me to care. See? Yeah. You started with Barack Obama and the New York Times, and you tied back to it nicely, so you do understand that concept, and it was a pretty good grabber. Your 3 reasons I didn't really buy completely, and I'll tell you why, but they, on their surface, were pretty good, so that worked.
2 minutes.
Okay? Yikes. The immigration laws, you claim that he's opened his borders, mainly because he can't close his borders, I would remark cynically. He's got a big ocean and a lot of problems of controlling his borders, right? And there's also a chance in having this open arm policy, there'll be a backlash from the people who enjoy a rather high unemployment rate, especially among young people. So sounds good, but
Yeah.
you know, the devil's in the details, sir. On your second, and I like the way you made the statistics real by pointing out this is like California, and that made it really good. On fake news, I'll just say briefly because I'm running out of time. You said he's viewed as a threat to liberal democracy, but you didn't really tell us how, any way, shape, or form he was going to do anything, or how he was going to contradict or solve the problem of so-called fake news. On stopping Brexit and rejoining the EU, okay, that's an old saw, and we'll see if that is going to solve his problem and make him massively popular. It probably will in France, so I buy that. Good summary, conclusion, and tie back. So overall, excellent job, good voice. Just work on some of the things that I isolated for you. Thank you. The high.
First speech givers, anybody not go? I know there's some, so.
Stand up, I'll tell you.
Anybody not on the roll sheet?
Hi. Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Is this good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, hang on a minute, Cheyenne. Let me do the drill a little bit for you. Cheyenne stands before you, looking around, managing attention. She's in the power stance. Her feet are wider than her shoulders. She's looking around to say, I respect you, and really means it. Making good quality eye contact. Very good. Pay respect. Find friendly eyes near the front and the center. Say your name. Feel the love. Start your speech.
Hi everyone, I'm Cheyenne.
Hi, Cheyenne.
Imagine a game of tug-of-war. On one side of the rope, you have gun control advocates. On the other side of the rope, you have gun right activists. Sometimes the flag in the middle of the rope is closer to one side over the other, but there is never a clear winner of the game. This dynamic has played out time and time again in the recent years regarding gun control legislation, especially when new incidents of gun violence makes headlines. So the question I want to answer today is, will the United States pass meaningful gun control legislation in 2018? And my answer is no, because of three obstacles that prevent the passing of gun control legislation. The first is the Second Amendment. The second obstacle is NRA lobbying, and the third obstacle is party polarization. Now my answer to this question is significant, because our safety is at risk due to the high level of gun violence in this country. We are not safe. Not even UCLA's campus is safe, as there was just a shooting incident 2 summers ago. With our safety at risk, don't you want to know why meaningful gun control legislation won't be passed this year? Now, the first obstacle that prevents the passing of meaningful gun control legislation is the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment states that we have the right to keep and bear arms, and the government is limited from infringing on this right. This makes it difficult to pass meaningful gun control legislation, especially since the courts have blocked gun control legislation, citing that it violates the Second Amendment. In an LA Times article published in June of 2017, the article stated that voters in the legislature passed a ban that would ban large capacity firearm magazines, so residents would not be allowed to own these magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. The U.S. District Judge Robert Benitez stated that this ban would violate our Second Amendment rights, so he blocked it from going through. This is an example of the recent trend of the courts to block gun control legislation, stating that it violates our Second Amendment rights. A second obstacle that would prevent the passing of meaningful gun control legislation is NRA lobbying. The National Rifle Association, or the NRA, is a prominent pro-gun interest group who lobbies to ensure that our Second Amendment rights are heard and dealt with. In an independent article published in October of 2015, the NRA had 5 million members pouring money into its political victory fund to help elect pro-gun politicians and lobby to prevent the passing of gun control legislation. In a CBS News article published in June of 2016, the NRA had $14 million to spend to lobby against those perceived to be violating our Second Amendment rights. The NRA lobbies to protect our Second Amendment rights, which involves helping elect pro-gun politicians to prevent the passing of meaningful gun control legislation. Now, a third obstacle that prevents the passing of meaningful gun control legislation is party polarization. There is a distinct disconnect between the two parties, Republican and Democrat. And although there are some Democrats who do oppose gun control, the majority dissenting voice comes from the Republican Party, who hold the majority seat in our government this year. Therefore, proposed legislation will die within Congress. In a CBS News article published in October of 2017, the Democrats pushed a bill nicknamed No Fly, No Buy, which would allow the FBI, those on the FBI's terrorist watch list, to prevent buying of firearms and expand background checks. But this No Fly, No Buy bill didn't pass in the Senate and failed to make it to the House. This is an example of the partisan divide, which leads to congressional impasses and legislation dying within Congress. In summary, I have told you 3 points of obstacles that have hindered the passing of meaningful gun control legislation. The first obstacle is the Second Amendment. The second obstacle is NRA lobbying, and the third obstacle is party polarization. So in conclusion, there should be no doubt in this room that the answer is no to my question: will the United States pass meaningful gun control legislation in 2018? So this year, it seems in the tug-of-war match, the gun rights activists have the advantage. The flag is closer to their side of the rope. But this does not mean that in years ahead, they will always have the advantage, as this debate over gun control legislation is not over, and the two sides are still tugging at the rope.
Thank you. Time
4:57.
4:57. Mm-hmm.
Hi,
What would you like, sir?
Hi, I'm Jihad. Again.
Hi, Jihad.
I really liked your hand gestures. You used them at the correct moments, like when you listed off your 3 reasons and you did Democrats, Republicans. It made it feel more animated.
Thank you.
Improvement.
Hi guys, I'm Ramin.
Hi, Ramin.
I like the fact they didn't have note cards, and I thought overall the speech was good. I just thought at some points there was long pauses where you're trying to catch up to what you're about to say. I think just if you improve that would help the flow of the speech a little bit more.
And just to take off on that comes with practice. And then after you know the speech, you can do some vocal variety. You can speed up, slow down, be more interesting to listen to, be louder. While we're speaking of delivery, I'd like to see a little more passion in your voice. This was what I would call a very passionate, prone topic, and yet this is a very dispassionate presentation on your part. You sort of just gave us the cold analysis without really saying how outrageous you felt to be NRA lock up the legislature, and so on and so forth. And California can pass a ban on automatic rifles, and it'll be overcome like that. So your thesis was good. I want you all to notice that not only did she have a great, significant statement, but she tied it into the shooting at UCLA. So she really talked to us where she lived, where we live. Oh yeah, UCLA, that professor down there. Oh yeah, that was bad. On the Second Amendment, your first point, yes, it was argue. You very clearly know how to make a claim and present evidence, expert evidence to support it. On your party polarization, this was, especially this,
1 minute.
this no fly, no buy. This is outrageous. Why should we allow people that we don't allow on airplanes to still buy guns? Someone explained that to me. You can add that as a side. I think this is outrageous. And that comes into where I had those little asides like, and I feel this way about this. And don't be afraid to put those in and say those things. Your conclusion and tieback I like very much. I had one more comment, which I will try to get in before my time expires.
20 seconds.
Yeah, just this idea of when you're over here, do a cheat over and take a quick glance at that side so you're not completely excluding them. So you're working this side, but you take a glance over at Camilla. Hi, and then not a long one, but just enough to show that you're not blowing them off completely. Nice job. Thank you very much.
Anybody still not give their first speech?
Thank you.
I moved. I switched two of my. I just wrote down the switching them for these websites.
Okay, fine.
Back up? Okay, cool.
Give me a moment, please. Is C-Pan here? C-Pan. He's in the class still. I don't know, maybe he died.
Oh my god, that's awful.
Metaphorically. Alright, the great Gatsby is about to speak. Where's your outline? Okay. As it stands before you, managing attention. Put that evil phone away. You shouldn't be texting in class. She's communicating respect non-verbally. She looks around the room and says to herself, I respect my audience. She's in the power stance. She's finding friendly eyes near the front center. Say your name. Feel the love. Start your speech.
Does anyone here watch Black Mirror? So, if you guys saw in the most recent season, there was an episode where a mom used a device to filter out what her daughter saw. So she was able to blur any images that might cause her any form of distress. But this ends up backfiring because, as we know, learning how to cope with distressing information and situations is an essential part of life and development. Similarly, universities are trying to filter out or blur what a lot of college students see. Disinviting speakers from universities has become a norm on college campuses. For example, according to CNN, February 2nd, 2017, violent protests erupted at UC Berkeley in response to Milo Yiannopoulos coming to speak, who was invited by the Republican group on campus. So this brings me to the question I was asked today. Should Milo Yiannopoulos be banned from speaking at universities? And my answer is no, he should not, because it's essential to our democracy that we don't ban speech. So I'm going to give you 3 reasons. First, it violates freedom of speech. Second, it prevents diversity of thought. And third, it does more harm than good. And this is significant to you guys because as college students, maybe you would like to invite a speaker. Maybe you'd like to debate with a speaker that you disagree with because you're allowed to disagree with people. So that's why you guys should care about this. So let's start with the first reason I'm going to talk about today, which is freedom of speech. So according to the Oxford English Dictionary, freedom of speech is the right to express one's opinion without restraint or censorship. So you might disagree with what a speaker says, and that's fine, but that's their opinion, and they should be able to express it. Because what would happen if we lived in a world where you were afraid to express your opinions? That's not a democracy. So a really important Supreme Court case was Terminello over Chicago, which was in 1949. There was a guy who was making a speech on the street, and he was arrested for, quote, disturbing the peace, because people were angered by his speech. And the Supreme Court found that that was unconstitutional, because just because a free speech causes distress doesn't mean it shouldn't be protected, because freedom of speech in itself, it invites dispute and causes a stir in people. So now that we've talked about freedom of speech, I'm going to move on to diversity of thought, which is especially important on college campuses, because this should be a place where you have to interact with different opinions that you might disagree with and challenge them and learn how to cope with them. So according to Yale Law Public Research paper, September 18, 2017, the paper found that the way to deal with unfounded speech is not less speech, it's more. So if you disagree with what someone is saying, if they're saying something horrible, then go to that event and talk to and debate that person and what they're saying instead of just shutting it down. According to the Daily Californian, February 7, 2017, which is UC Berkeley's newspaper, the chancellor was receiving so much criticism for allowing Milo to speak. But in response, he explained that we can't support speech selectively, because that would be so subjective. Who would decide what is okay and what is not? And he also said that just as a standard for UC Berkeley, they should be behind free speech as a school. Because specifically at universities, that's where diversity of thought is the most important. So now my third reason, now that we've talked about freedom of speech and diversity of thought, my third reason is that it does more harm than good, because it increases hostility and it condones violence. According to the Chronicle for Higher Education, February 8, 2017, turning schools into echo chambers where you only hear the same things over and over again just increases hostility and polarization. It's better to know what the opposing sides' arguments are so that you know how to confront them. And then according to the Stanford Review, February 2017, condoning violence is not okay. Peaceful protesting is one thing. You saw that if you guys saw Ben Shapiro, who came to our campus. People were peacefully protesting, and that was totally acceptable. So in summary, I've told you today 3 reasons why Milo Yiannopoulos should not be banned from speaking at universities. I talked about freedom of speech and how it's important to not be afraid to speak your mind. Then I talked about diversity of thought and how having to interact with different opinions is important in education. And then I talked about how it will do more harm than good. So in conclusion, Milo Yiannopoulos should not be banned from speaking at universities. And the Black Mirror episode I talked about earlier is applicable here, because universities should not filter what students see, because it will backfire.
518.
518, wow, pretty close. I believe we're here, right?
You had a really good stage presence. You really commanded the audience, I think, and you knew your speech. You didn't like stumble on any words or anything like that. So, to commend you for that.
Thank you. Improvement.
I don't know.
Start with your name.
I'm Kaylin.
Hi, Kaylin.
I really liked it. I didn't really have like ton of improvement. I guess like condensing it slightly because you went over like 15 seconds, but that was really good.
Yeah, Haley, I liked your speech. It was, as a speech professor, I believe strongly that the solution to these speech problems is never censorship, but more speech to counteract it and to let the problem be worked out in the marketplace of ideas. So you were preaching to the choir with your solution. You started with a Black Mirror and the Netflix and the dangers of technology. I was wondering if I was going to hear something from the Black Mirror more vividly in the tie back, okay? But you did do kind of a tie back, so that was fine. Overall, you cited your articles and you had the full citation, including the dates. So we were able to assess the credibility of what you were saying. You need to make your narrative be a little bit more vivid as you come out. Should he be disinvited? Should he be banned from the university? My answer is no, or hell no. You know, you really let your position stand. And I'm going to give you 3 reasons why it would be harmful to our society, to our democracy. And then you go into it. This is not your fault, and I want to compliment you on this, but Haley decided to change around the order of her presentation, her points, which made it difficult to follow here. But I want to encourage you, when you think of a better way to do it or to say it, be editing to the very moment you die in life, you know, because if there's a better way to say it or do it, do it. And with these word processors now, you know, it's a miracle what you can do. And I take it this was after you had printed it out and you didn't have access to anything new. Am I about out of time? Yeah. Yeah. Terminello, Chicago, classic, good. I think you made a strong case for each of your points. And you're a very likable speaker, so you did a good job. See if you can not even have a little tiny note card. You hardly needed it, but you did an excellent job. Thank you, Haley.
What? We need to change the battery.
Oh yeah, quick, turn it off. Yeah.